Welcome to this Connect M3 Thought Byte podcast recorded on 10th of January 2025. I'm Helen King, and my Thought Byte today is titled The Biggest Cover-Up. The biggest cover-up is the so-called grooming gang story, the biggest cover-up of all time. People in the US have been showing a strong interest in a serious and long-standing problem in the UK. Instead of promising to resolve this problem, however, the British government appears angry and even paranoid. The issue is often described by mainstream media and politicians as grooming gangs. That's an appalling dilution in many eyes of the real nature of these crimes. These crimes are rape of the most horrifying kind, perpetrated repeatedly over years on children by gangs of men. This dilution of a crime, however, appears to be the tip of an ugly and filthy iceberg. The current British government, in its seat for just 6 months at this point, appears to have shown the nation its true colours in its response to this problem becoming a hot topic. I have to say, the current Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and at least some of his party, seem more concerned about protecting their own reputations and careers and about so-called foreign interference than about these dreadful crimes. So, there's no change here. This latest evidence of self-interest isn't new. It's central to the usual narrative we get from the government, backed up by much of the mainstream media. Even more, the issue is referred to as the grooming gang scandal makes clear that it's a scandal that politicians and the media are bothered about. Not the crimes, but the fact that people, and some as far away as the US, have found out about it and are now being public about it. As my grandmother used to say, you're only doing something wrong if you get found out. I don't think she was being serious. As far as I know, she never went to prison, or into politics for that matter. It does seem to me, however, that this attitude is a familiar one to our current misleaders. One of the people in the US who has annoyed our current government by being interested in this issue is Elon Musk. Elon, who doesn't mince his words, has said on social media that Keir Starmer and others should go to prison for their part in this horrendous series of crimes. Elon's also said that Jess Phillips, the current safeguarding minister, carries huge responsibility for the loss of child abuse. What he's been saying hasn't gone down well with the current administration. It's quite possible, if not almost certain, that Elon's intention was to get this dreadful culture of child abuse and state cover-up to be finally dealt with. The current government, however, seems more concerned about their own feelings caused by Elon's hurty words than about the victims, past, present or future, or, just as importantly, stopping the gang rapes. The CEO of a charity that helps victims of this kind of abuse also has some hurty words of her own for Jess, Keir and other politicians, along with chief constables of police. She says the gang issue has been going on for well over 30 years. There have also been fascinating revelations from ex-police detective Maggie Oliver about how the police were directed to ignore the crimes, with the direction coming from the top, number 10 Downing Street, when Gordon Brown was the Prime Minister. It won't have helped Elon's popularity with our current government that he has shared the petition for a new UK general election. That petition had been signed by over 3 million people just before Christmas and continues to gather support. The current government is shouting about Elon trying to buy politics in the UK. Well, the thing is, you can only buy something if it's for sale. Let's all be honest. So perhaps the government is trying to tell us something, and just maybe we should listen. It's odd that Keir Starmer is accusing Elon Musk of foreign interference in politics when he himself, as a UK PM, sent hordes of Labour Party members to the US last November to interfere in the US election. Meanwhile, there'll be no knighthood for Elon as a reward for trying to stop the abuse of children. Jimmy Savile was knighted in contrast. How interesting that is. I really suspect that Keir Starmer and many other members of his party think Elon and other people who draw attention to issues that need to be resolved do so because they're out to get them. It seems many politicians in the UK harbour conspiracy theories about forces that are plotting to unseat them. To an extent, they're correct. For example, 3 million plus UK citizens wish to unseat them for lies, the breaking of election promises, and now, added to that crime, we have cover-ups. Governments also seem to nurture dark and disturbing beliefs about something they call the far right, which appears to mean anyone who doesn't agree with the government is conspiring to seize their assets. Part of the reason the rape gangs have not been stopped is that many people, including our administrators, have been programmed to believe that it's not going on, and so to deny it. It's something that people who are labelled far right talk about. That's how the programming goes, along with the belief that, if it were happening, the establishment would be dealing with it. This deliberate programming also prevents people from believing that paedophilia in any form goes on, and so the massive, horrific abuse of children continues. One of those people labelled far right is a gentleman who is now residing in prison for exposing the lies on this subject perpetrated by the government and its media supporters. I will speak of him shortly. Child abuse, gang rapes and other types of horrendous crime is happening, and the establishment, rather than dealing with it, is allowing it to go on. The only idea the current PM, Keir Starmer, has put forward so far is laughable, being to force people to report child abuse to the same authorities that have colluded for decades to cover it up. Keir himself is included in this category during his lengthy time as Director of Public Prosecutions. By Keir Starmer suggesting this Orwellian and dystopian idea, he showed his true colours. The only benefit of such a mandate is a benefit to the government's goal of constant and increasing surveillance. Making people report on their neighbours with legislation, as well as anyone they don't like, is a great way to boost surveillance in a totalitarian state. Meanwhile, the abuse goes on. Like many British people, I was unaware until recently of the scale of both the crime and the ineptitude of the government, along with the supporting authorities that are supposed to prevent and deal with crimes such as this. Those authorities have allowed those crimes to happen at best, and have been complicit in crimes being committed at worst. Authorities include the police, local councils, social services, and government ministers. In contrast to the perpetrators, who have often not been prosecuted, and when they have only received mild sentences, people who have raised awareness of issues have often themselves been harassed and imprisoned. And here I have to give mention that even child victims of these horrendous crimes have themselves been charged with being drunk and disorderly at the scene of a rape. This would have made good material for a novel about a dystopian future if it wasn't already happening. Tommy Robinson is in prison for making and sharing a documentary about what really happened at a school where young girls were being threatened. The documentary reveals a completely different story from what the government said happened at the school, supported by what the media said happened. The documentary includes admissions to camera by teachers and other persons about what really happened at that school, and the true nature of the main perpetrator at the centre of the story. For anyone who hasn't watched the documentary, I would suggest it is essential viewing, if only to gain a different balance of viewpoint. Many people would say that Tommy Robinson has been placed in jail by the establishment to prevent further embarrassment for the establishment. That embarrassment would result, indeed is now resulting, from a different truth now emerging daily, thanks, in part, perhaps, to some foreign intervention. But one good thing about this issue is that so many people are singing from the same hymn sheet about it. People who I didn't think would ever speak politely about Tommy Robinson are now doing exactly that. The understanding that we've all been lied to for an extremely long time is growing, and it's growing rapidly. The rape gangs, not grooming gangs, have been allowed to commit heinous crimes that nobody can say are acceptable, or rather, nobody decent. Hurty words indeed, for some. The fact that the current government is more concerned about itself than about stopping these crimes shows how unfit it is, and how badly the current system serves the people. The same is true for the clear inability of the parliamentary members, a privileged club, to understand why people are angry. That inability to understand was painfully apparent in the so-called debate on petition for the new general election. In particular, there was a complete lack of understanding by SMPs in the government that breaking their election promises had lost the trust of well over 3 million people, and that number grows by the day. Additionally, there was a belief or a delusion that trust can be regained. We need to understand that trust is like virginity. It is only lost once. The British grooming gang scandal, that most inappropriate term for this issue, that makes it sound like just another story about SMPs spending their expenses, is another brick in the wall for our current system. Or perhaps, I should say, it is another brick out of the wall. So, that's my current thinking and opinion on this subject today. But I wonder, what do you think? And in particular, how much money would you put on Keir Starmer being forced to resign? And soon?